What is going on, everyone? Tis Miyanovich, and I welcome you to the Mang Dojo, the place where we process the raw struggles of men in an unprecedented paradigm. There is something inside of you that wants you to be more than what you are. But there also may be something inside of you that wants you to go down. And for some of us, that means going down for good. So, remove your ego, drop your bullshit, become vulnerable, and step into the dojo, mate. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Mang Dojo. Tis Miyanovich. And you all know how I love to do introductions. There's nothing like spending hours of recording and then hours of editing, and then you have to come and do some more shit for free. However, it must be done because these are important conversations, and the Mang Dojo is doing great things now in this world, and some very cool things coming up that I'm looking forward to. So today I want to introduce you to a conversation that I had with a friend of mine who is a kind of a Renaissance man. He does a lot of things, but he has been heavily involved as a professional in the firearms community for quite a bit. And this is my friend Chris Cheng. Chris is a former tech industry professional who worked for Google. He is also a part-time firearms industry professional, an author, and both a gun rights and gay rights advocate. He is best known for being the winner of season 4 of the History Channel's show, Top Shot. Chris is a gay man. He lives in San Francisco and has been married to his partner for 10 years. He and his partner have been together for about 16 years. All of these elements of Chris's life we're going to talk about. Chris was one of the first people that I thought about for season 1 of the Mang Dojo, because if we're talking about masculinity, I think it's very important to get the thoughts of a gay man. Masculinity historically has had quite a narrow definition, and there's been a lot of gatekeeping around that definition. And I thought it was quite important for us in the first season to ask the question of a gay man, are gay men men? Because there's most definitely, traditionally, a gate being kept out there in the world, specifically in Western civilization, where straight men are men and gay men are less than. So I consider it an essential question for us to ask in this first year, since we are dealing with masculinity and femininity, yin and yang forces inside of a male. So without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Chris Cheng. And let's step into the dojo, man.
I'm writing a book. That's like my current kind of major project. It's a military novel, like a war novel, World War II, based on a group of soldiers called the Purple Heart Battalion.
Okay.
I don't know if you're all familiar with them.
I'm not.
Yeah, it's a group of Japanese Americans who volunteered from the incarceration camps here to fight for the U.S. Army. And they are the most decorated unit in U.S. military history,
okay,
and nobody knows about them.
Right. I never heard of it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this the book that I'm writing, it's based in history, like all the sort of like there's 3 main battles that the book revolves around. Like those are all factual. It's the soldiers who are fictionalized, but they're all based off of veterans from the Purple Heart Battalion. So it's a cool story. That's like my big project at the moment.
Well, man, that sounds like if your story is strong, that sounds like it would be an excellent movie, like an excellent screenplay.
That is definitely my dream, Randy. It's basically, I would love for it to be the Asian American version of Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, dude,
right?
I could see it for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, definitely take your time then. I definitely, like, if you don't have to have a job, well, writing is a full-time job. You just don't get paid for it at first.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much a passion project. I do not have a publisher lined up, so I'm writing this no matter what. Once the manuscript is finished, then I'll shop it around for a publisher. And I'm confident, but you just never know if a publisher is going to bite until you start, putting out packets, and we'll see what happens. I'm hoping to be done maybe with the manuscript by the end of this year. Like you said, like I'm taking my time, like especially for World War II stuff. Like I got to get everything right. I'm not military, I'm a civilian, right? So it's like just studying things like troop movements, right? And how to describe the kit that they're all wearing. Yeah. And I got the gun part, like all the guns, like I got guns. Sure. I got guns down, right? Yeah. But some of this like very specific military stuff. Thankfully I hired a researcher who has a background in like military novels. Yeah. So yeah, she's been kind of like a little bit of a coach also. And she's given me some materials to read that describe military movements accurately. Mm-hmm. And that's been like worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. Did you have to go the fictionalize the characters route because it gives you more leeway and because there's probably not a lot of information out there about the actual like historical characters that were involved?
Great question. So yes. And there is a lot of information, thankfully, about many of these veterans. There's this project called Densho, and it's a nonprofit that interviewed a lot of these veterans from the Purple Heart Battalion, and it's all available online, right? So like first person accounts of their time, on the battlefield. And then, I fictionalized because at first I was going to write a non-fictional book about the Purple Heart Battalion, but then Daniel James Brown, who wrote Boys in the Boat that George Clooney bought, right, to make a movie, he also wrote a book about the Purple Heart Battalion called Facing the Mountain, and it's a non-fictional account, and it is phenomenal. And after I read Facing the Mountain, I said, I can't do any better than this.
Right.
I can't do any better than this. So I think I need to just go the fictional route, which thankfully has been way more fun. Yeah, because I have a lot more creative freedom, and I'm not so constrained, right, by what actually happened to real people. But I can like ratchet up the drama and the excitement, when and where I need to with the fictional angle, which is great.
Does it feel good for your brain to, I don't know if this was happening before or not, but does it feel good for your brain to not be so fucking focused on the world of guns right now? Like guns. Does it feel nice to just be like, I want to put that aside and like put my brain into this, even though guns are a part of it? It's a completely different. Do you feel like a difference in your brain, like more excitement?
No? Oh, huge.
Yeah.
Oh, huge. Yeah. I mean, it's also why, and maybe we need to record soon so we capture a lot of this. Or are we recording?
I did. I always hit record right off the back so I don't forget. So we'll get all this.
There we go. Yeah. Good stuff. What was this? Oh yeah. So, I transition frequently, right? From, for example, right, this past week I was in San Diego with the Noveski team, and they do an annual trip from Oregon, where they're based out of, down to Coronado. And so for the past week, I was with gun friends, and this is like Navy SEALs and special operations folks. A lot of them train out of Coronado. I was the only person with no tattoos, and I'm like average body, right? Where all these dudes are just like ripped, full, sleeve tattoos and just like these gnarly beards, and operate kind of masculine energy. And then the day I came back, I was at a tech person's birthday party, and it was all tech geekery for a few hours, and then I was at some gay friends like baby welcoming party yesterday. So then I was around a bunch of my gay friends, and then transitioning into creative book writing process. It's for me, it's a way of kind of keeping things fresh, right? Keeping things interesting, and also just experiencing life to the fullest extent that I can, and like having that freedom and that flexibility to kind of navigate through all these different spaces when and how I want to.
Yeah. I find that more so than other areas I've been involved in, there's something about guns that if you focus too much time into it, I find it, I don't say it depresses me, but it like kind of sucks my soul out a little bit too much, more than other areas, other industries I've been involved in. And I have not been doing that this year. I have been putting guns in their place. They're still important, but other things are number one. And boy, do I feel a lot better. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, and I know exactly what you're saying and feeling, because I've gone through it too, right? Where firearms were a full-time profession for me at certain points. And, sometimes the work is very rewarding, especially with outreach, reaching out to new shooters, and especially for LGBT and Asian American shooters. There's a lot of satisfaction comes with bringing new shooters to the range, and especially opening up people's minds to something new. But it really has taken a lot of the fun out of shooting for me, right? Where it's like when I go to the range and I'm shooting, let's see, I won Top Shot in 2012. So 13 years ago, right? 13 years ago, like shooting was just pure unadulterated fun, right? I was not a Second Amendment advocate. I was not doing social media for guns. I wasn't involved in the industry. And so I go to the range, right? And it'd just be fun. But now when I go to the range, I'm often thinking, okay, should I be taking pictures or video for social media? And if I get product from a company, like, okay, like, do I want to do the product review now, or so like there's all of this, and then of course the political and public policy overlay around my Second Amendment advocacy work is always kind of creeping in the back of my mind too, about, okay, the right, your standard 30 round, AR-15 magazines. If I'm shooting one at the moment, should I film a PSA, right, about how restrictions on magazine capacity is stupid? And so, yeah, I've also been trying my best to really focus on the fun part of shooting, and of course there is a time, and I'm still very, very active in Second Amendment advocacy, but specifically when I'm at the range, I just want to have a good time, which is what I did last week, shooting with Navy SEALs and Noveske. I didn't film much content. I was just like there to shoot and hang out, and it was wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I just think guns are important, but they shouldn't be the center of the universe for anybody. It's my experience is the more somebody treats guns like the center of the universe, the more they seem to become unhappy and unstable or toxic or weird. Or I think the embracing the importance of the right and the importance of the fun and the hobby and embracing that is really awesome and important. But centering the human experience around it, I know it's not for me. And I see a lot of examples of that also. And I think it's good to have, I think to be the best representative of it, I need to be a healthy, happy person. You know what I mean? And so a good balanced person. So I can relate, man. I can relate to all of that. So we have you here today because we want to talk about being a man. And, in the introduction to this, I'll roll in the introduction, right? And just give everybody a small bio for you. By the time they hear this, they'll already know you're Asian. They'll already know you're gay. They'll already know you work in tech. They'll already know you've worked in guns. And by the way, as an aside, once you get your book project done, I definitely want to have you on the Liberal Gun Owners Lens and talk extensively about Japanese history and war.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, would love to do that.
Full on, because I love military history. And so, like, it'd be good for us to get into another compartment and, like, geek out on that shit. But so one of the questions that I'm asking, and I ask a lot of people, particularly if you're gay and if you're a male, was there bullying when you were growing up? Because you're Asian, and I'm not sure how you handled coming out or whatever, but were you bullied growing up?
Thankfully, I was not bullied for being gay. I was bullied a little bit for being Asian. So let me kind of tell you about this through like the Asian lens, right? So, my hypothesis is that bullying often comes from a place where the bully perceives that someone else is weaker than them, right? And therefore they can be bullied. Asian Americans, I think stereotypically are seen as weak. They're seen as, if we're going to choose between masculine or feminine, a lot of Asian Americans often read as feminine/weak, right? Which, and again, I don't, for the record, I don't fully buy into the stereotypical social constructs of masculinity and femininity, right? From sort of the textbook version of femininity, and it can mean weakness. I think a lot of bullies, they kind of cue in on that. So Asian Americans, right, can often be a target for bullying. And so for me, like it wasn't ever present, thankfully. Like it wasn't like I'm getting bullied daily. It was usually, some random kid, on the playground makes some like offhand racist remark. And I would say that, yeah, it definitely shaped who I was and who I am, because what happens with bullying, at least for me, was that, well, I need to project strength, and strength doesn't always mean fighting, right? For me, in this case, strength meant neutralizing the insult, right? Taking the approach that I'm not going to let somebody else's negative energy impact me. Right. And in other words, I basically, ignoring is not the right word here. I mean, I would ignore the person, but the insult, right? The bullying insult, I wouldn't ignore that. I would take it in and process it and say, okay, that was a really bad, mean thing that this kid's trying to do to me. Where is this coming from? Did I do anything, right, to like provoke this negative energy coming at me? And I mean, the answer was always no, right? I'm just like kind of standing there minding my own business. And if someone wants to bully me or try and bully me, I'm not gonna let them win. Is sort of what was going through my mind. Now, to your initial question, right, was I bullied for being gay? So I didn't come out until like early college, like 18 or 19 years old. I mean, I knew I was gay like around the age 12, but I didn't present as, at least I would say I did not externally present as gay when I was younger. And I still don't think I necessarily present like super gay. Like if you just sort of if you're listening to me talk, if you like see me on the street, like I don't, I mean, of course I don't know what other people think, but I don't think that I necessarily present as your stereotypical, like effeminate, sort of right here, there's sort of this kind of gay voice that, I mean, a lot of my gay friends have that gay voice, right? It's sort of this, there's that stereotypical kind of trope and voice and persona and the look. And I do remember being younger that I wanted to distance myself from that gay stereotype because I was closeted and I didn't want to be outed. Right. So therefore I leaned very much into these like masculine stereotypes. Some of them are like, my friend group growing up was all about crude jokes, right? Crude jokes on like every level. Like we insulted everybody and anything. And the more kind of egregious the insult, kind of, the more points you're earning amongst your friend group. And these are just, amongst my friends, but, there was that, and yeah, my sort of the masculine part of things, was also just like participating, I don't know, your stereotypical like male activities, like sports, right? So like I played baseball and then golf and football. And thankfully for me, like I loved, all those, I loved like those activities, right? Like being at the beach and like we were bodyboarding a lot when I was a kid. Like that was a lot of fun. And it did, in my mind, at least, it was all feeding into this like masculine, right? This like masculine side of my persona again, right back to projecting strength, right? And not making myself a target for bullying or for any kind of unwanted attention like that.
Yeah. The other good word for when gay men put on more spice in how they're presenting themselves and talking, flaming is what we usually would call it. Like just a little bit flamey, right? Just putting a little flame on. It's certainly a real thing.
Yeah. Your comment, reminded me of a few of my college friends who were closeted, in the college experience. And once they came out, it's like their flamer switch just got flipped. And it was wild, right? Just like hearing their voice, go up like half an octave, and like, I mean, just like sounding very flamey, like feminine is like so interesting to, and so, I remember, at the time seeing some of my friends go through that kind of, flamer transition.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this whole social construct of masculinity, right? I mean, my sort of rings is it's one of two things. It's either they were faking the masculine, right, social construct because, right, they wanted to fit in, like exactly like I was talking about. And like once they fully came out as gay, that was this their true self that's coming out. Or right, the other angle here is, in the gay community, like any community, there are just like there's social norms and mores and sort of these expectations of like, what does a gay guy look like? How does he talk? Like, what does he wear? What kind of job or jobs does he have? And I sort of wonder if some of my, gay friends who, flipped the flamer switch, if they were just like buying into the gay stereotype of the whole thing. So it's been very interesting just to see how people can change over time.
Yeah, if you're kind of masking originally and projecting for so long that you're straight and you have all these masculine quantities, well, you're probably going to have that same habit when you come out. You're going to do the same thing again. My experience is that for dudes that I knew that came out when they were younger and they were flamey, it chilled way out. Like as they got older, the flame knob just goes down and down and down and down. And so it has something to do with youth, and all young people want attention more than probably older people, and you're trying shit out. So, yeah, I know I've some gay friends that are older and they still flame. And then those are the ones that's actually who they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. But I just find that the older, like old gay dudes are not different from old straight dudes. Everybody's tired and just like, would you just shut the fuck up? Like, so what?
The cynicism is at the max.
Yes, like I don't have the energy to fuck around. Like what,
Yeah.
So it's interesting how it affects like everything the same. It just tempers. What were your parents? My guess would be, from the little I know about you, but from the health that you project as a human, that you had solid parents. Were your parents good?
Yeah. Thankfully, my parents were, they were supportive, and I was hesitant to say very supportive when I came out, because it was a surprise to my parents, like when I came out to them, and they were initially just concerned about three main things. One was making sure I don't get AIDS. That was like one of their like first thoughts. Number two, they were concerned about my career. That being gay in the workplace, here in Silicon Valley would jeopardize or hinder me in some way. And then the third part was they saw their dreams of being grandparents be totally dashed. And so, having that conversation, it was good, right? Because we got to talk about, hey, I mean, this is a significant part. Being gay is a significant part of my life. But honestly, I don't put any singular part of my life at, it's not like the singular thing that defines me. Just like you were saying earlier, that guns are not the singular thing that defines you, and you don't revolve your whole life around guns. Like I don't revolve my whole life around guns, nor being gay, nor being a foodie, nor being, I love traveling, right? It's like, I do a lot of things that I enjoy, and I just usually try and shuffle it up, sometimes, right? And right now I'm in a creative endeavor, right? Writing my second book. The first book was called Shoot to Win. It was an instructional book targeted towards the new shooter, taking all of the tips and tricks and paradigms around the fundamentals of marksmanship that I was studying to win Top Shot. Right, so Shoot to Win is just it's a consolidation of everything that it that helped me win Top Shot, all in that book. Now that was very different, right? An instructional book, like that was basically a brain dump for me. This next book about the Purple Heart Battalion, right? It being a military novel, it's a very different muscle, right? Very different creative muscle. But yeah, I like to grow and change in fun and interesting ways, whether it's in marksmanship or as a writer, as a public speaker, as a gay person. But just the overarching theme for me in my life is to continually challenge myself, right? In all these different facets, right? Emotionally, physically, right? Make sure I'm going to the gym and like staying active. So I'm trying to get back into athletics a little bit and getting out to the golf course a little bit more. And I've always kind of wanted to get better at tennis, which I don't know if that ship has sailed, but yeah, just trying to be the best version of me on all these different planes is just a constant goal for me. And yeah, always feeling like one thing that I do pretty often is I look back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and ask myself, hey, like, am I better, happier, faster, stronger now than I was, 5-10 years ago? And thankfully the answer is always yes. I'm proactively working on this, right? It's not something, my improvements aren't something that has just happened, right? I am proactively thinking about what is this next accomplishment, or what do I want the next era of my life to look like?
As an aside, you said you grew up in Silicon Valley. Were your parents in the tech world, or was that or were they doing something else?
So I actually grew up in Orange County,
in
Southern California.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mom, she was an executive assistant, and my dad was in medical device sales.
Okay.
And they, for me, they are the embodiment of the American dream, where they came from like lower middle class, and eventually they bought a house, right? They had 2 kids. Are arguably better off, right, than my parents were at our age, kind of thing, which is the parent, like that's a parent's dream, right? That you raise kids that are better off, right, than you were. And they both came from families that had everything taken away from them by the government. So on my dad's side is the Chinese side. My grandmother basically got stuck here when she was at the University of Pennsylvania studying abroad, right? She's a Chinese national. She got stuck, during the revolution, and was 1939. So she just wasn't allowed to go back home. Nationals who were studying abroad in Western countries, because they didn't want the mind hive back in China to get polluted by these Western philosophies and ideals, right? That these Chinese nationals who were studying in universities, they didn't want them to come home. And then on my mom's side, which is my Japanese side, but my Japanese side is actually from Cuba, and so that's a whole nother thread. Long story short, in the mid 1800s, my Japanese family emigrated to Cuba, and so then fast forward to 1959 when the Castro Revolution happened. The Castro regime took everyone's money and businesses and property. It all became, property of the state. And so, yeah, my mom's family, they fled Cuba, right, to basically start over. And so both of my parents, have, but they've started over here in America and have worked very hard. And, for them, they attained and achieved the American dream. And so for me, I need to do, my duty and live a good life, right? And try and do as many good things as I can, whether it's in, Second Amendment advocacy or LGBT advocacy, writing about the Purple Heart Battalion, these amazing stories about how Asian Americans that we have fought and bled for American freedom, just like everybody else in this country. And Asian Americans were not weak. American is everybody else. And if you want to tell me to go back where I came from, I'm going to go back to Orange County, California. It's like, that's where I'm from. Like, I'm not from China. I'm not from Japan. I don't speak either language. And yeah, it is, yeah, it's just, it's been a wonderful experience. Like I said, it's just, and then I have my parents, right, to thank for providing a very, nurturing environment where, ultimately, right, I could be who I wanted to be and do what I wanted to do. And my parents, yeah, have been supportive, in all my endeavors.
Obviously you played sports growing up. And you said, you knew how to present strength in the face of bullying. Was there did your parents ever say things to you like, Chris, don't get into fights, don't be physical? Did they ever get into like values related to passivity or anything like that?
No, not really. I mean, my dad is Protestant. Well, and he grew up Protestant. My mom grew up Roman Catholic. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of like talk around avoiding fights or anything like that. I think for me, like, it's just always been in my sort of DNA to be more of a mellow person. Like I'm not seeking out conflict. I mean, I went to grad school and got a degree in conflict negotiation. It's just always been just sort of this natural interest of mine, right? To learn how to diffuse situations the best I can. Yeah, I mean, one example, the closest I think I've ever gotten into a quote unquote fight was college. I was in a fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon, for any listener who cares about what house. And so, I went to UCLA, and the SAE house, it's this gorgeous, gorgeous house. I mean, it's a mansion, right? Kind of configuration. And we have an open courtyard that overlooks the street, which makes us an easy target, right? For other fraternities to come and, prank us. And, the pranking was just a common thing, amongst, the fraternities. And so this one house, one evening, we were all drinking, and basically this one other fraternity, they like bum rushed our house. There was like 20 dudes who just all of a sudden, like, breaking through the front door, and they're like trashing stuff. I think it was Christmas time. So I think they were like, kind of trashing the Christmas tree, that we had up. And, there's like it's like classic, almost like Animal House mayhem.
Yeah.
Just like shit getting broken, people screaming and yelling, like beer cans like flying all over the place. And the closest I've ever come to like really like striking someone is I just like some freshman. I mean, I was probably, upperclassman at this point. Some freshman like runs by me. I remember just like grabbing him by the shirt, and I just like slammed him up against the wall, and I just go, "You need to get the fuck out right now." And I just like threw him like at the door. But like, I'm not a violent person. I mean, but now that said, right, it's one of these things like, I'm not a violent person, but I need to, if I need to defend myself, right, in an actual life-threatening situation, like I would like to think that I'm not going to hesitate, right, to defend myself if my life is being threatened. And that's, where a lot of my firearms training, being a student of self-defense, I'm an instructor for marksmanship, right? But marksmanship is actually separate from self-defense, right? You could be the best target shooter in the world, but if you lack the tactics and the mindset, right, the self-defense, right, mindset and self-defense tactic toolbox and toolkit, your marksmanship skills may not be very helpful if you don't know the self-defense tactics. So it's like I was saying, I haven't gotten into a lot of fights, and I don't plan on having that change.
When you were in college, were you out? Did you come out before?
I was partially out in college. Yeah. Some of my closest friends knew. But being in fraternity, right? Being in fraternity was another very hyper masculine environment that there wasn't a lot of room for gay people. I mean, now there are a lot of gay people in my house, myself included, but we didn't come out until like after, right? We had graduated,
Right.
and thankfully, fraternity brothers like, oh, they don't care, right? It's such the non announcement for them, but I'll never know how would they have felt if I'd come out in college. But like I said, like, I was out to a few fraternity brothers and they didn't care. So I think it's a safe assumption for me to extrapolate, right, from that small sample size of 4 to 5 fraternity brothers who knew I was gay, who didn't care. And most of our fraternity brothers were all aspiring to similar morals and values, which is what our fraternity is based on. And so that being our guiding light, being a true gentleman is making people feel comfortable around you.
That's interesting. I never thought of that would be a core value for a fraternity. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's also why SAE turned me on my particular chapter as well. Because a lot of fraternities, right? So every single fraternity and sorority does have a core set of values, right, that they are aspiring to. And it really varies, right, house by house and chapter by chapter to the, as to whether that chapter is actually living the values or trying to live the values. But yeah, my chapter at UCLA, of course, we weren't perfect. And oh my God, right? I mean, we fell short often, right? Both as a chapter and as individuals. But, failing, failure is such an interesting thing. And we can, I think this is a great, like, kind of a tie back to masculinity. I think there is this thread around masculinity means not failing, right? And being successful. And so therefore oftentimes you don't take risks, right? Or you take low risks, right? To increase your chances of success. And in the context of this fraternity conversation, and we are young adults trying to become better people, right? And I'm very proud to say that my chapter, we did that. For a lot of people, right, fraternity beer drinking, it's about women and hooking up, and sure, you're playing intramural sports and dominating, on the playing field. And that's, and it was all that for us, but it was more, right, with us trying to become the best men, the best person, right, that we could be, and not just having this true gentleman credo, as our guiding light, but the accountability factor was each of us, right? So if I see one of my fraternity brothers falling out of line, it is my duty to call him out on his bad behavior and say, you are not acting right, and you're not acting as a good person. Right. And I expect that in return too, right? When I am falling short, when I am, doing something that I shouldn't be doing, like I am relying on my fraternity brothers to call me out of my shit. And I think it's good for all of us. And so, right, that concept right there has extended into my post-college adult life, right? Where I surround myself with people who will call me out of my shit, right? If I am saying or doing something that's a little bit too off the rails or whatever, that like, hey, give me a little slap, and let's have a conversation about what I'm doing wrong and what needs to change. And this all comes down to accountability, right? And taking responsibility for one's actions, which I think we see less and less of that these days. People don't take responsibility for the words that they say, for the actions that they take. They blame other people, they blame the circumstances, and I just I don't operate that way, and I don't think it's productive. I don't think it's healthy, and it's not empowering, right? It's never empowering to say this problem is because of something or someone else. Right? Paradoxically, I think it's actually more powerful to say, I have fallen short, or right, I am not good enough to right for whatever thing. But right here's the key: is what can I do, or what should I be doing to get better, to be better, and to do better? Right. I'm going to focus on the things that I have control right with, and that's about I'm going to take personal responsibility for my actions and for my words. And so, I really have fraternity to thank for really embedding that mindset and that mentality.
I have to agree that I think men need other men a lot more than we know, and we need close circles, and we need that mirroring, and we need that keeping each other in check. It's in our DNA to have that, and we are definitely missing it. And what we have now, to my mind, is a proxy for it, which is all of this very online existence. And I think that the very online existence and the internet in general is an emasculating, castrating force. It is not building men into these positions where we call each other on things. Oftentimes, males are using the reality of the internet to avoid that conflict, to avoid that other male saying, dude, you're so full of shit right now. Like, to me, it's a machine of perpetual adolescence. It's a very adolescent thing to want to be online and never be challenged. And if somebody challenges you, you flip out, you run away, you unfriend them. It's very easy to do that. I think a lot of males are on the internet because they believe they can avoid that necessary bumping of heads between two brothers. And I just see it perpetuating itself. It just keeps people in a state of adolescence. And so that's why I'm against it.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'm a technologist. I've had part of my career here in Silicon Valley, and I'm a huge proponent of technology. But to your point, social media in particular, right, has been very toxic. And it brings out, I think, these very extreme qualities in people that are often negative, right? Like you're saying, the conflict avoidance, the insults, the cyberbullying, and I like your concept of it's a perpetual adolescence, right? It's like peak immaturity, right, in many pockets of the internet. And the only thing that gives me hope, the only thing that gives me hope that society, we will eventually correct for some of these internet deficiencies, is that, every technological advance over the ages has always, had some amount of conflict and social disturbance. So, right, if we look at the radio, for example, right, when radio came out, there was a whole bunch of people freaking out, saying that, oh, well, now that people can hear people talking on the radio, that people aren't going to read as many books, right? And if you're not going to read as many books, you're just going to get dumber, right? And people were freaking out about that. And then when the TV came out, right, the same sort of conversation, people freaking out that, oh, we're going to become dumber and less productive as a society. TV is just going to rot our brains. And I feel like the internet, it's relatively new. I mean, right, the modern day internet really didn't start until, let's just call it the late 90s. That's sort of when a lot of people were getting DSL. But even if you had dial up, that was sort of good enough, right? But they're with every technological disruption over the eras, right, to the point is that there are things that will change. But ultimately, I'm an optimist. And I believe that we will eventually find our way back to a more centered place, right? Where people will realize how toxic parts of the internet are, and to either minimize or just sort of unplug. Yeah, right. Unplug from the parts of the internet that don't feed your soul, right? That don't make you feel better, that don't make you an actual better person. And part of why I feel this very strongly about this is we have a loneliness epidemic in our country, right? I've been reading some articles about how, the number of very close friends, the average number of very close friends that an American male has in their circle has decreased drastically, right, over the decades. I can't remember the numbers, but it was on the magnitude of oh, I have like 3 close buddies, like 20 years ago, it was like, I have 3 close buddies. And now the answer is like, I have like 0.6, close friends in my circle. And I mean, that is just right. Humans, we are literally wired. I think we are literally wired to be social creatures, right? Now, not when I say social, like, not like extroverted butterflies, right? And like going around and chattering with everybody all the time, but like the pandemic, right? It was like sort of this, almost like this like weird social experiment to see like what happens when we get isolated. What does that do to our mental health? What does that do to how productive and how happy we are as a society? And I would say, right, the social isolationism part, right, of the pandemic, was a pretty negative, like social, right, negative social health, mental health impact on, especially on men. I mean, of course, on women too, probably, but for men, it just like kept on driving people into these like deeper, darker corners of the internet and video games and really not having in life, in real life experiences. I think is ultimately bad, and I think our genetics will eventually pull us back in this direction of socializing and interacting more with people in real life.
I hope so. I mean, I see signs of both, unfortunately, from my eyes, and I tried to just be neutral, but I currently see a lot more bad than good. And so I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I'm not pessimistic, but I think we need to brace for the possibility that things could get worse. Now, I don't think that's everybody, because there's like the group of people that seem to be able to like parachute in to social media and the internet and just walk right out and they're fine. And then there's other people that it just seems like massively poisonous for them no matter what they do, and they're addicted to it. And I don't know where it leads. But I do know that definitely even among the younger kids, like they're getting sick of it. So like kids will like have hangout social groups where there's a basket and you put your fucking phone in the basket and then you go and you hang out. Like you don't take your phone with you. Those movements are starting to happen, which I was really glad to see. I don't know where it leads, but definitely I agree with you in terms of the pandemic. We had some dark shit happen in my family because of that isolation. It had really negative effects on both of my daughters, and we fought pretty hard. We knew about it, right? And we fought pretty hard to make sure that it wasn't going to happen to them. And they still had problems with depression and still had problems with isolation. And, we gave them a little bit more leeway with social media, and they ended up being friends with people that we were not cool with, going into weirder, darker nooks of the internet. So, if technology drives Homo sapiens in that direction, we're just not going to make it. Or we're going to be some kind of other fucking being, cybernetic.
Yeah, I mean, right? You think about The Matrix, the movie.
Yeah.
You think about WALL-E. Right, you just have people who are like literally plugged into a cyber network and living these like alternate lives. And honestly, like it's not that far fetched, right? Where you have a persona in the digital world. I mean, right, this were like the metaverse, right, conversation that was going around a few years ago. I mean, yeah, right. Like if you could be a successful digital avatar in the metaverse compared to your like boring, mediocre real life. I mean, if those are your choices, I mean, I think it's rational to understand why somebody would choose the cyber fake life, right? The internet life. And it is sad. And I mean, while I'm optimistic, I mean, I don't think it's happening. I don't think we're going to see improvements anytime soon, right? To your point. I mean, when I talk about, right, these like the arc of technological disruption, I mean, it takes like decades, sometimes, right, like generations for things to like sort of settle down somewhere. I mean, AI, I mean, the thing about bringing AI into this, I mean, this is a whole nother can of worms that, right, like we have just not seen technology like this powerful and like this meaningful in arguably forever. So, yes. This isn't like the TV, this isn't like the radio. I mean, this is AI as a whole different beast. I was, I did a little bit of a prank on a friend last week at this fun shoot with the Noveski team. So Lorena Noveski and I, like, we're good friends, and she hates country music. And she was going off on this rant about, country music sucks and this and that. And so I took an AI tool and I found some podcast interview of her online. And I literally fed the audio transcript into the AI tool. And then 30 minutes later, it was done processing and I could literally type out whatever words I wanted in the AI tool. And it sounded like my friend Lorena. And I had her saying how much she loved country music and how big of a fan she was. And it was very funny. Obviously, that's a very innocent use of AI, but clearly, if I wanted to make some actual deep fake audio clips and video clips, I mean, anybody can do that now.
Yeah.
Another thing that we were talking about was, Lorena was saying, oh, it's so annoying how my iPhone now can auto-generate draft replies, right, to your text messages and right in your emails. And I was like, well, it could get to the point, right, where Siri and all of these assistants, I mean, they're AI that's now getting to know us, right, how we talk, how we sound. And it could get to the point where, Randy, you text me and my response will be auto-generated by my AI, and then your AI will just respond to my AI. And our phones could just be having this whole conversation without us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, sure. And I'm I don't talk about it, but I keep a really close finger on the pulse of what's happening with AI, because I think if it goes bad, we can't even calculate what that level of bad means. I stay up on it, and it's all of these discussions are not lost on me. I'm no stranger to it. And I just know that males specifically, our genetic reality, our physiological reality needs to be outside, sweating, exerting, getting that sun on the skin, doing with other males, collaborating, and females and non-binary people, just humans. We need to be out there. And I think we're already paying major prices for it in terms of, there's the loneliness epidemic, and then males also are facing this crisis of meaning now. What is a job? What is earning your keep for your loved ones? Now, what is protecting kith and kin? All of these things that we've been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, that whole paradigm is shifting in one way. In one way, it's still the same out there, out yonder. It's still the same. But there's an unprecedented force that's here and shifting an unprecedented paradigm onto us, and it's doing it so fucking fast. Prior to this, the fastest thing, which was crazy fast, would be from 1880 to about 1970, which is not very long. We went from horse and buggy to jet combat aircraft, being on the moon, nuclear weapons within 70 years. And that was crazy. This is probably going to be crazier. So what I'm always asking, what are the effects going to be, not just on humans, but what are the effects going to be on the male mechanism? Because our pacing on the inside with our nervous system and our metabolism and our hormonal system and our lymphatic system, those are very slow paced systems. And it seems to me we're being forced to go into a rate of existence that we're just not made for. What is going on, everyone? Tis Miyanovich, and I welcome you to the Mang Dojo, the place where we process the raw struggles of men in an unprecedented paradigm. There is something inside of you that wants you to be more than what you are. But there also may be something inside of you that wants you to go down. And for some of us, that means going down for good. So, remove your ego, drop your bullshit, become vulnerable, and step into the dojo, mate.